Hey guys, how's it going? So a bit of a talking head video. I wanted to make this video due to a interview report. A discussion was made with Fujifilm, and there's a very prominent part of this interview that they had. I forgot the outlet that made this. I'll try link it in the description below for people to read through the whole thing as they wish. But also I'll try put some snippets here. So what is it? This particular piece was discussing Fujifilm's recent success, their inventory, and their pricing strategy. All of this kind of ties in together. So in the past couple of years, the camera industry has seen a resurgence in some success. Sales have gone up from what they were before, and I presume these companies are making a tidy profit. And within a number of brands, they've had certain cameras within the whole lineup and their product stack that have really sold and really had a lot of attention compared to other products. Now, the reason why we're focusing on Fujifilm is because they're the ones who actually answered these questions. That's very particular. And it's something we're noticing within this industry, especially the camera space, rather specifically. And I would presume other outlets have asked the same questions to other brands, but they perhaps not answered them as, I would say, brutally as honest as Fujifilm. And some of these responses that we got from them, I'm not a reporter or a journalist, but I like to sort of add my thoughts to this. And we will say that we didn't like what they said. So one of the really big problems of the camera space is price. Not just inventory, it's generally price. This is an extremely expensive hobby, and we really need manufacturers to actually lower price, find ways to lower prices, have some more tactical ways of making their products cheaper. And I generally do think a lot of them are actually overpriced, and kind of seen not as a luxury piece, but as some sort of value piece, some sort of equity piece, rather than an actual tool and product and people to enjoy as a hobby, amateurs, even professionals. Now, something about this particular video making, I am not discussing at the point of a professional, and when I'm discussing finances, I am not referring to the super rich, because they fall into a different category of their needs and requirements, of where this article perhaps doesn't impact them as much, if at all, because again, needs and requirements are really different. So what is it about this article that really got us riled up? It is essentially discussing, first of all, inventory, which is basically what we're trying to say is stock levels that these particular manufacturers produce. Economy 101 is supply and demand. If you can supply enough, you can meet the demand, and if you've got more supply than demand, then you can actually charge a bit less. Fujifilm seems to be manipulating the stock levels to maintain a degree of demand on certain products. Now, very specifically, this will be the Fujifilm X100 or V, whatever you want to call it, which is, by all reports, selling incredibly well in terms of volume and perceived demand. So it is selling by a lot for a product of this price tag, and it is being sold out. Now, the thing with being sold out is also means that it means two things. One, that it is selling far beyond expectation, that it's selling faster than they can actually manufacture them at capacity. But also it could be a case of, and I believe this is the case, and they kind of admitted to it, they only produced a certain amount to have that perceived level of demand, which fuels people's wants and desires for that product. Apple used to do this in the past. They don't really do it anymore, and it worked for them in the past, but it doesn't work at the moment for them now. I'll discuss a little bit of Apple and smartphones, that specific bit, about supply and demand a little later, but I'll discuss a topic about them just as we go along. So, as Fujifilm is essentially manipulating stock levels, it also means they are trying to keep their retail prices high and trying to tell their customer base who bought their products, do you know what? Your product has high value because we are not making too much of it. Now, just to touch on resale, when you're selling a product you have purchased, either to a person or to a retailer, Fujifilm do not benefit from that transaction in any way. They don't, when a brand sells their product to a retailer, Fujifilm in this case has already made their money. They don't make money when customer buys, that's the retailer and the distribution channels. Fujifilm and a lot of companies make their money by selling to the distribution channels who then send it to the retailer. That's kind of the basics of it. So this really doesn't have a strong financial benefit to Fujifilm, other than having people selling their camera so they can buy the newest and latest, greatest, whatever that could be. But it also gives people position. Let's say if you owned an XT5, you sell that to a person, you get a good chunk of money out of it. You're in a position to completely change system rather than buy a new Fujifilm body if to make an XT6 in the future, or you want to move to the X100V or 6 for whatever reason. Just go with me on that. And Fujifilm says they want to create a brand strength by not overproducing, and they want to just produce enough to keep the demand running, and that expression brand strength just really irks at me because they're trying to say we want to be the premium brand. They've even compared themselves to Leica, and Leica is seen as probably amongst the most premium brands, but that's due to heritage. They don't make the best products from what I've seen on reviews, but they have brand heritage. This is a very big difference that Fujifilm don't have. They've been in the space for a long while, they've been in the tech space for a long while, but they're trying to perceive themselves as prestigious, which is what they're trying to say. They want their products in the hands of a select demographic of individuals of stature or status and wealth. And the thing is, the XT single digit line, the XT5, tends to be in the hands of prosumers or professionals. So that's kind of that inkling of people who are consumers and they have a decent amount of money. I'll talk about that just a little bit after this snippet actually, because it's an interesting thought process. The X100 of V is definitely the best-selling camera they've got, and the thing is, social media such as TikTok really helped with that. But I think there's something that needs to be spoken about. That camera really appealed to a very specific demographic that is larger than people would expect. And they do exist. This is something that I'm going to talk about in a second. The thing with that camera is, and this is something that Fujifilm is trying to be under really reeling that bandwagon, is this camera is selling incredibly well. We need to sort of bank on it, and they're trying to keep that going. And in my opinion, that's not going to work. They are doing something that the camera industry, that Nikon and Canon did in the past, which led to the big dip. More on that later, so much later, but I'm trying to keep it as orderly as I can. But I think they're doing this incorrectly. I think they're making the wrong decision here by deciding to only make premium products, which basically start from $1,000. They've kind of completely omitted their product stack that's below that. What should have been their budget camera, the XT50 that was released recently, cost almost as much as the XT5, to the point, why would you pick that over that camera? Same with the XS20, which I would argue is probably a better package than that. So it's really weird they made this sort of decision. They They seem to be targeting just a premium market by putting everything in these cameras. Now, I do think you can absolutely sell these cameras by having things taken away and price it appropriately. There's a lot of things people don't need, and I think that either got feedback from consumers or from outlets, journalists, and reviewers. And one of the things that irks me about some of these outlets is they don't tell, if they make it, like for example a YouTube video, what is their position, who is their intended demographic, who are they talking to when they're talking about cameras. When let's say there was the XT30, or even the budget line, which was like the XT200 and that range. If we talk about that, if you put that in the hands of a professional, someone that is a professional photographer, a professional cinematographer, a professional videographer, professional filmmaker, though they can review that very technically, very clinically, their very likely outcome of that and critical sense is not going to be applicable to the demographic those budget cameras were designed for. If you're pricing something around about $500-600 £500-600 or euros, you don't need professional stuff. You don't need professional color spaces. You don't need professional IBIS. You don't need professional cooling. You don't need weather sealing in that. There's a lot of things you don't need. And in my eyes, there's a lot of things that people just want a good enough image quality, good enough video quality, and ease of use. And I feel like a lot of brands, including Fujifilm's, trying to not understand that anymore. The most popular camera, be it stills or video, is the Sony ZV-E10, and that could be had in the UK for about £500-600 without a lens or with a kit lens. And that is a very powerful particular price point. Very powerful camera. You still get very good image quality on the stills. You got a fantastic video. It's probably the most vlogger, YouTuber video camera currently out there. If you're looking at a YouTube video, that's probably the camera they're going to be using. I'm using the Pocket 3 to make this video because I need to use it a bit more and justify the purchase in an indoor space. That would be an interesting perspective as well, and I quite like the tracking as well, so it's fun to use. So what I'm trying to say is Fujifilm may have put their cameras to the wrong people, or a lot of wrong reviewers or outlets that tend to look at things differently to your general consumers, the hobbyists, the amateurists. So I fall into those categories. I make YouTube videos. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm not a professional filmmaker, cinematographer, or videographer. I'm none of those things. I'm someone that enjoys tech. I'm a consumer that likes to use it as a hobby, but also want to make videos like this as well. And I think that's these type of people, there's an abundance of them. There's loads of people in this particular space. And I think Fujifilm has completely kicked them away by pricing them out, because why would you want a Fujifilm? To talk about the X100 or V, what I just discussed earlier, that appeals to a very particular demographic. What is that demographic? That demographic of people is people who do like tech, do like taking photos and some videos, but they want the right camera to do it with. They want the right styling, they want the right tech in there, and very importantly, they want a full all-round package. Now, that camera is a fixed lens camera. It's basically a compact camera on steroids, which it is. But to a lot of people, they don't want to be a professional photographer. They don't want to be a professional videographer or cinematographer. They just want to take nice photos, and if they want to take a video here and there, maybe they do some content creation. There you go, they've got that. They like that camera because in the act of using it, they have a great amount of joy in it, and that's fine. And when we look at the price tag of that camera, it's expensive. And what I really want to start with first, before I go on to this, I completely understand. And I completely have, there is a lot of people out there that really struggle for money. They really struggle to pay their bills, rent, mortgages, whatever. There is a lot of people in that sense that really don't have spending money or fiscal spending in any kind of way. But we also need to discuss and really highlight that it's true for the other side. Again, I am not referring to professionals, I'm not referring to the super wealthy. I'm referring to a demographic of people which is far, far larger than people realize that exist, that earn enough money comfortably to pay off their rent or mortgage, whatever amount that will be, their outgoings and their bills, and they still have leftover money to spend on whatever they want. But very, very likely, these people don't actually spend a lot of them. They don't actually buy a lot of things. They don't buy a lot of stuff often. They may buy a new piece of furniture here and there. They may buy a new TV here and there. They may buy a console here and there. They may look into getting a car, or they don't have a car at all. But these are the people that when they spend their money, they kind of need a good reason for it. They're not going to go bankrupt. They're not going to be in a large amount of debt, if at all, if they buy the X100 6 or V. They just need a good reason to spend it. They look at social media, they see that particular camera and be like, this fulfills my needs for photography or videos. It's a good all-round package. They don't need to worry about additional lenses. What they get is really good, and that's what appeals to them a lot more. That's your demographic. This demographic isn't going to be like, oh, I really want an interchangeable lens camera. There probably aren't those people. So if Fujifilm's trying to fish those people, not the right people. They're not going to be your buying demographics. I do think Fujifilm made that error there. And that's just going to work. You need to have the right product to sell, and it will sell regardless of price points. And we can see Fujifilm's trying to say, at a premium price point, we can up our margins by charging whatever. Guys, whatever it costs to make for that company, if that camera costs, I don't know, $300 US, £300, €300 to make that camera, and they charge 1,500, 2,000, they can. They can charge 3,000 if they wanted to. I don't want them to, but they can. They can charge what they like. And that's kind of what we're seeing in this space with multiple manufacturers. But again, we have to focus on Fujifilm because they've actually openly said it. And the reason why I make this is a in a general sense for their whole product stack to be priced highly. We need to look back into a bit of history here. Back in the day, Canon and Nikon were the two big players in the camera space. Sony was there, but I think they focused on the compact camera at this stage. But Canon and Nikon were the two big players. And all camera manufacturers, but especially Canon, blame the onset of smartphones completely killing their business, causing that big slump in camera sales. Year after year after year, some brands faced a lot worse off. Nikon was really a bad space, Fuji as well, because that's kind of all they made at that time. Fuji had other product as well, so they kind of coasted a bit, but Nikon especially were only a camera, but was mostly just a camera company, so their product stack wasn't diverse enough to survive, but they did. They survived nonetheless. But let's talk about why they suffered. Now, I do agree smartphones did take away some of the potential sales, but I also argue with the people that were really into smartphones and had access to those cameras were not going to be your customers anyway. They were never going to buy those cameras because in those days, the cameras themselves were very expensive and the lenses even more so. That's still true to this day, but back then, if you wanted to take, before the onset of smartphones, if you wanted to take a picture of videos, those cameras were your only choice, and the price tags that went with them were all you had. If you wanted to take, it was just unfortunate. But yes, they are right. If you want to take a picture before the onset of smartphone cameras, then yes, you had to buy a camera. Just the way it was. However, when smartphones came in, it took actually a long while for them to really have reasonable cameras, for people to sort of went, you know what, this is good enough for me. But what made smartphone cameras good enough for people? Smartphones many years ago, flagship prices were around about 500-ish across the board, US dollars, Great British pounds and euros. They were about that price for flagship. That gave you the best phone, best screen, best processor, and a lot of cases the best camera for that device at the time. And what people found was, at 500, they had a very good product. They were very happy with it. It felt very premium. Here's the thing, guys. A lot of people finally had access to a luxurious premium product for the money they paid. And when they compare pictures taken to the cameras compared to if they did own a camera with just a kit lens, this is a very important sort of perspective here. They're probably in a non-controlled environment. So if they were indoor having a house party, they went to a party, they went to a club for some reason, they were in a space where they had no control lighting, they had no control space, they had no control subjects. With the camera packages back in those days, they probably found the images weren't too different. And that's a real big problem for cameras, is when people can't distinguish a noticeable difference, especially if the camera body alone is about $1,000, and if they look at additional lenses to make up for it, they're probably charging 500, another 500 to $1,000 more. When you're charging up to 2,000 whatever currency, US pounds or euros, and people think I've got a £500 smartphone which takes a very good photo, that's a lot. Though the people who bought the £500 flagship smartphone were not your customers to begin with. They weren't going to buy a camera because they will see that price tag and they'll just turn away. And that's really, in my opinion, the pricing, the stubbornness of the camera brands at those days, where they just kept high prices and they would not budge, they would not adjust. They really try to push the high price agenda. They really try to push the high price, what's the word I'm looking for? Bubble, as it were. This is long before Apple, by the way, and their the bubble of products they have. That the bubble they have and what they've got going. The camera industry was far more notorious for this. Way worse. There was mostly just first-party lenses, and when it comes to third-party lenses, there were some, but depending what you wanted, they were still very expensive. What I'm trying to say is cameras were expensive. They still are expensive, and they didn't give people enough justification for it. There wasn't enough difference. So when you wanted new customers, people to bring in, they weren't interested. So it's not a case of they couldn't get more sales. It was just they couldn't attract new buyers. I think I might have contradicted myself there. And the people that were in that space already, they're in that sort of bubble, they had enough. They were like, I'm constantly buying these expensive cameras, these expensive lenses. They had enough. And they probably just would have sold it. The price was the real reason why there was that slump, decline after decline after decline. It was only in recent years have we seen a camera industry resurgence. And I think a lot of that is actually to do with the budget cameras that we did have or have currently at the moment. The use base is completely decimated, but we still have cameras such as the Sony ZV-E10. We had the budget Fujifilm cameras, they actually did exist, Same with Panasonic. Nikon had some stuff as well. They still have. They actually still sell some budget cameras. And extremely importantly, in the last couple of years, maybe 5, I would say maybe since COVID pandemic, a lot of these manufacturers opened up their mounts. Canon, we'll ignore them. We'll ignore Canon here. A lot of these manufacturers opened their mounts and allowed the openness to have these budget lenses, such as Viltrox, TT-Artis, and the autofocus lenses, guys. And I think that's really opened up for people to say, this I can deal with. Think about it, guys. You can get a Sony ZV-E10 and you can get some Viltrox lenses and you can still be under £1,000, €1,000, $1,000 US. You could probably get 2 lenses and one of them could be still a first party lens. And you can still be under 1,000 and you still have excellent image quality for pictures, excellent video, excellent audio quality that comes with that video. So you think that that's what really led to the surgeons, in my eyes. Not Sony trying to say, let's make premium products. These are just premium. They do have premium products, but they're very specific for their target audience, which are professionals. They're targeting their high-end cameras to professionals, so they're charging more for it because there's more tech in it that suits their needs. You can't arbitrarily just increase the price when the target demographic can't justify those prices at all. Your average Joe, your average hobbyist isn't going to be like, you know what, I want to spend £1,500 each time on a new camera. They're not going to work like that. They aren't going to do that. If anything, due to the great products from different brands, what they're just going to do is, let me look at these other brands and see what they have to offer. What can they give me? And I will say this. If I had, for example, if I had a Fuji X-T5, for example, and I sold that and I got, let's say, £1,000 out of it, I wouldn't look for a Fujifilm camera. I'll begin to see if there's a full frame offering in that price range or that can fund that route. And there is. This is the thing. You could buy a Sony Alpha 8 or Sony A3 or Sony A7, so A7 III, A7C for about that price, or just a bit more than that. And you can still buy reasonably priced lenses from first party and third party manufacturers. So I think if Fujifilm continues down this route, if they wish to pursue it by manipulating inventory, which they try to manipulate the level of demand so they have an excuse to give to consumers, we don't have enough cameras to sell, so we're gonna keep retail prices high. It's not going to go down very well. You're going to go back to where Canon and Nikon actually were back in the day. People got fed up with high prices, and we're seeing that with multiple industries. We're seeing that in the smartphone industry. We're seeing that in the computer space, especially with graphics cards. And I want to talk about phones in a second. When I mentioned flagship phones used to be about £500, $500, 500 euros. Now they've moved to 1,000, a 4-digit figure. No thanks to Apple on this one. The thing is, number of manufacturers, including Apple, that are selling these high priced items, 4-figure digits, they're all going through a sales decline. They've been going through decline for years. Apple, Samsung, and whatever manufacturers are not doing very well at the moment. Their sales are down compared to where they were couple of years ago, when they actually sold cheaper phones. Now they no longer do. And I've noticed with the new slew of releases on these smartphones, they've not priced them any more higher. In some cases, and I've noticed Samsung with their latest models starts to creep down in price when it comes to iterative products. So I would imagine in a couple of years, smartphones will see a correction in their pricing, And what these manufacturers will try to do is have a halo product with all the bells and whistles to have a high price tag, but their mainstream models will have a lower price tag. I can imagine them actually moving to that model and pricing, then we'll see the flagships mainstream phones from Samsung be closer to the 500, 600 mark, because a brand, Google, with their Pixel lineup, did launch essentially their flagship line, their mainstream line, at about that price. Guys, the Pixel lineup since the 7 did extremely well. They are really well selling phones, they're very well received phones, and the reason for that is they're priced about 500, and you're getting the best processors they have to offer. They only make each one for each generation. They're putting the same high-end cameras that they have for all of their range. So the Pixel 7, on the 3 models they have, the basic 7 and the 7 Pro, had the same camera. Same with the 8 series, they have the same camera. So you're getting the best foot forward at decent prices. They just have differences into the handset themselves, which people can pick to their needs. So that's the important thing. If they want a bigger device, they spend more money. If they don't need it as big, they can get a lower price. And if they need something even cheaper with more stuff cut out, because they don't need some additional materials or premium feel or features, they get a cheaper product. And that works. That really works for people. And I would say that's where we're going to see phones going. But to hear a camera brand saying we want to still increase prices further, that's not going to bode well when the rest of the tech industry is seeing a decline in virtually everything, because they don't have the X100 6 or V or whatever it is. They don't have that product which is propelling that brand and their whole product stack. If they continue that path, they will get reduced sales, they'll start blaming consumers, they'll start cutting back on their product releases. So it's a bit of a snowball effect and the whole avalanche. It will affect the consumers. And for certain, and here's the thing, guys, I am a Fujifilm user. I own a Fujifilm XS10. And the more I see the way Fujifilm releases their products, the way they're pricing, and this article, my next camera won't be a Fujifilm. And I imagine many people who are in that ecosystem, that brand, won't either. Unless they're diehard fans, or they're professionals, or they're super wealthy, where it doesn't matter. It is a very unfortunate state of things. Especially with the cost of living crisis around the world. We're seeing a manufacturer trying to justify keeping higher prices instead of being able to release fun, cheaper products for all of us to have. I would love to have another Fujifilm camera, maybe the E series, but I don't even know they're going to make another one. But I think if they made an E5, it's probably going to be over $1,000. So, cheers for guys if you made it this far. A bit of a ranty video, and see you next time.